think we're about ready to rock and roll.
Let's rock and roll, mate.
Cool. Omar, finally, this has taken us months. I mentioned on the podcast with Connor that this is something that we've been wanting to do for a while, but personally between me and you, for my own podcast and now this has been something I've been probably texting you about for at least half a year. So thank you, firstly, for coming on and welcome. How are things? As you know, we're only a few weeks out now from the start of the season.
Yeah, no, listen, it's a pleasure. Obviously, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's definitely been a long time coming. Things have been good. Can't complain at all. We launched ODH Player Project that has, been growing, and it's been rewarding, and with, Chupacabras coming up this summer, it presents, the perfect opportunity for, me to grow into another role, this assistant coach role.
Yeah. And look, we'll touch on all of that throughout, but I think kind of the bigger news for the overall picture is the fact that you have retired. You've hung up the boots, and obviously now you're in a coaching position. So I've got to ask, just before we dive in, how's that been for you? This is obviously the first proper year now that you're not doing any pre-season. You're not gearing up for the start of the season. You're now on the other side of things. I know that transition sort of started like a bit last season, but obviously now it's all official and done and dusted. How are you adapting to that? How are you feeling?
The feelings are definitely bittersweet. Competing for the past 10 years, 10, 15 years has, been ingrained in my DNA. Getting up in the mornings, putting in the shift, eating well, focusing on implementing, the habits, the habits of a professional football player. Now that has come to an end, and it's now about funneling or channeling, that same energy into coaching, which I believe I'm prepared for. No, it's not so much about, doing those box-to-box runs. It's about pushing and elevating athletes, to have the mindset and the mentality to go out and just be the best version of themselves. And I believe, my career has afforded me the opportunity to do that. And now, super grateful, obviously, to be a part of the staff of the McKinney Chupacabras. And I think, I believe it's a great learning experience for me and a growing experience. I go into this role, obviously, with the past 10, 15 years of playing as experience, but learning from, the notable Frank Yallo, I find that very, rewarding.
Yeah, and we'll loop back to Frank. That's kind of how I want to finish this interview, because what an amazing appointment that is for the club, but also for yourself, like you say, someone that you can learn with, grow with, and set you up for a really, exciting coaching career. But let's just backtrack a little bit and look at your career overall. As a child, growing up, wanting to be a player, would you have taken the career that you got, playing for your country, representing them, captaining them, I think, at under-17s, playing in the MLS, then playing in a few other countries as well? I know you said that it's feeling a little bit bittersweet at the moment, but just having a look overall, if you were, 10 years old again, would you have taken that?
Absolutely. Listen, absolutely. I think throughout my career, you've somewhat been afforded the opportunity to look back at the experiences that you've had and the future that you have in front of you. Rarely do you ever lament on the things that could have been. Right. I think it's very important that current professional players just live in the moment. And that's something that I learned to do. You know, as a 10-year-old kid growing up in Kingston, Jamaica, with all the ambitions in the world, you know, wanting to play for Liverpool FC, my favorite club, in front of that cop, you know, is something that you dream for and you aspire to, you work towards, right? But not attaining that goal is fine, right? You know, you get to a point in your career where the main thing is to learn and to improve and to get better. And, you know, if that had happened, great, you know, but also representing Jamaica, you know, at the U17 level, at the World Cup, then going on to represent and captain, you know, the 20s, the 23s, and then represent Jamaica at a senior level is an astounding accomplishment. And that can't be taken for granted. Then going on to, you know, represent the Tar Heels, that's a top Division 1 institution. And even there, you know, the learning process continued under Coach Carlos Samuano, who I'm extremely close with right now. So yeah, the journey continued from there, and, you know, fortunately I was, you know, afforded the opportunity to get drafted in, you know, the Super Draft, and enjoy the start of a very promising, you know, professional career. So looking back at the entire scope, you know, I'm extremely pleased with how it transpired.
How did you actually get into, I'll call it football between me and you, obviously everyone at home knows soccer, but how did you actually originally get into football? I know it's such a big sport over there in Jamaica, you know, alongside with Coach Steve, also from Jamaica. I know how big of an impact it has on his life, but, you know, like you say, you managed to represent Jamaica, but how did all of that even start? Where did that love first come from?
I think it pretty much started from family. You know, we're big on family, you know, especially in Jamaica. We, you know, very close with each other. Everybody loves football back home, you know. Dad, my brother, my cousins, my uncles, close family, friends. So it was inevitable for me to fall in love with the game, and that I did. But I must say, you know, growing up, I didn't love it at first.
Really?
I genuinely didn't. I was one of those kids that enjoyed being on the computer screen, playing computer games. But it was my mom. It was my mom that was adamant, you know, I needed to stay active. I needed to do something. My older brother, I must say, my older brother was the one that pushed me, because he played. And he's about 2.5 to 3 years older than me. And obviously he had a team, he had a club. So my mom was the one that went to my brother's coach and said, hey, he needs to be active. He needs to train with, you know, my older brother. Yeah. And that's how it started. First year, hated it. Until I scored my first goal. That feeling of scoring my first goal, it was over. I fell in love with the game, loved every part of it, and I was pretty good at it.
Well, clearly, obviously, you made a good career out of it. What was that first goal like? Take us back.
I remember like it was yesterday. So, ball comes down the wing. It gets delivered into the box. Defender misses it. And then in comes Omar, who is barely 4 feet tall. Just runs onto the end of it and just flicks it with his back heel into the back of it. Yeah, pretty much like a Cruyff. It was unreal. It was good. And then my dad, my mom, you know, all my family friends jumped up and were like, "Oh my God!" And then the opposing coach, I remember like it was yesterday, said, "You guys made the baby in the crib score. Oh my God!" So that's something that my mom and I always joke about. But that feeling obviously stays with me today.
It's really interesting that you noted there about family and family being kind of really pivotal in your journey. I feel like what the Chupacabras are trying to do and have done so far successfully is create that kind of family culture. Certainly amongst the players, it's such a young team. That's kind of what USL2 is built upon. You know, college kids coming in, and one of our college kids kind of following a similar journey to you, Braden, drafted by Real Salt Lake, exactly the same as you. How's the conversations been between you two? I know that there's been, you know, a connection there that's kind of built up over the last year, but certainly now over the last few months with his journey taking this next step and then him coming back this summer. What have you been helping him with? What have those conversations been like?
Well, no, yeah, we've exchanged text multiple times. He's asked for guidance, you know, on several occasions, and you know, before he went back off to university, I gave Braden some KPIs, some things to work towards, and he completely demolished every single one of them. But separate from those tangible things that we can see, that we can touch, he possesses the mentality of a professional player. He wants to get better. He wants to know how he can get better, and that's something that we were, you know, closely tied to. And he's very similar to me in that way. His mentality is one that he wants to be the best, but how can I get to that point? And you know, that's pretty much where I came in last season for him. You know, I tried to help him in any other way that I could, and equally he helped me. You know, he helped me, you know, become this now assistant coach that is understanding of the new age of soccer players. You know, no, it's not necessarily about, you know, running the furthest or, you know, being the fittest or being the most in tuned. It's about finding ways to be the best version of yourselves. You know, so that was something that we were very closely, you know, tied.
And that mentality of yours, you know, we were just speaking off camera while we were walking over here to the studio. That mentality of yours is something that, you know, you really feel is the heart of what you do as a coach, and kind of helped you through your playing career, because that debut that you had for Real Salt Lake, you know, as a teenager, was a really difficult debut, wasn't it?
Yeah. So on my professional debut, you know, you can certainly find it online. You know, I had a seizure. You know, it was impact to the head that, you know, with the altitude and obviously the concussion, I seized up, I fell down, and in the process, I tore my labrum and dislocated my shoulder. I woke up to the sight of Jeff Kassar, you know, the coach that drafted me, and he pretty much said, "Hey, buddy, you had a seizure on the field, or, you know, how are you doing?" I was like, I had a what? Because at that point, I didn't remember anything, and he pretty much, you know, said, "Yeah, you had a seizure." And then I saw the sling, and then my first question was, you know, okay, when are we gonna train? when are we back at practice? And he was like, whoa, slow down. But yeah, that was a very interesting debut. But it shaped who I became as a pro, and it shaped, you know, the experiences that were to come, because that wasn't the first one. Well, not first seizure, but the first injury.
Yeah,
obstacle that I would sustain. It was the last seizure, thankfully, that I had, and I've had none since. But it was a tough period and a tough time. But you know, it absolutely shaped the player that I would become throughout my career.
And you mentioned that you felt like it had an impact on how your career developed. Like I say, we were just speaking off camera about it, and I mentioned that if you look at some of the case studies, certainly in the UK, there was a player called Tom Lockyer who had a heart attack on the field. He came back, but he's had to move down several divisions to be playing again. Fabrice Muamba had a similar kind of incident, and he never played again. And kind of the outlier of that then was Christian Eriksen, who was already one of the top pros and as an established player. So for you as such a young guy, and then having to navigate your career, moving clubs and stuff, you felt like that kind of hindered things. Of course, helping you eventually down the line with this mentality that you've managed to build up, but some really tricky conversations, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Every club that I would go into, this was one of the first conversations that we would have. After doing the research on me, they would obviously see it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Everyone would ask, are you okay? But in a very concerned way. Yeah. And I wouldn't say hindered my career, but I do believe that a few decisions had to be made, and I can't go back and turn the hands of time, obviously not, but I focus mostly on the positives of everything, that transpired on that day, and everything that happened after.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And everything happens for a reason, and
absolutely,
thankfully so. All of that, all of the the ups and downs that you went through throughout your career, resulted in you ending up here,
exactly,
in McKinney,
exactly.
Which I'm very happy for. But I've got to ask, as many people ask me as an Englishman, in McKinney, how the hell did you end up here?
No, so last summer, I was coming to the end of my contract in England, and I saw that Jose signed for the team, and I said, Jose, I want to give it one last crack. I want to come back to the US and play. And he was like, well, what are you waiting for? Come on, come on over. And it was purely for the love of the game to come and play. And then when I came and I saw the community and the essence of what Hitch and the ownership group were building, I said, okay, this is certainly something that I want to be a part of. It's extremely special. And, that first game when we saw 4,000 plus, I was like, this is at USL 2 level.
Yeah.
That's something special and something that you want to be a part of.
No, for sure. And that 2025 season was, as I've said in a few other interviews like this, off the field, huge success. On the field, a little bit more difficult. Of course, first season expansion team, brand new. You're expecting teething issues, but can you just kind of review that season for us? Like I say, you were starting that transition from player to coach anyway due to a few injuries. So you kind of got to see both sides of the coin.
Yes, absolutely. First franchise or not, first year franchise or not, it was, the performances weren't good enough. And I was the leader of the team. So I take that. I take that and I say it's on me. And I'm that kind of guy. I look at the man in the mirror. Performances weren't great.
Yeah.
We can absolutely say that results were not great. Whether we're a first team, a first year franchise or not, the results speak for themselves. I've had, numerous conversations with, Jose and, how we could have done things a little bit differently. And it all comes down to, one thing. And, it's effort from everyone, from, the top all the way down. So with that being said, it's in the rear view. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And it's about looking forward to this season and really having an impact on, the players coming in and the fans that, pay their money to come and support us.
And this 2026 season, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, as I'm sure many others aren't, but it's very difficult to do that when you have someone like Frank Yallop coming in as the new head coach. We'll continuously say this, and I know Frank will hate this because it's just kind of guy he is, but He's a 2-time MLS winner. He's a 2-time MLS Coach of the Year winner. He's managed the Canadian national team. David Beckham at LA Galaxy. Landon Donovan as he was bursting on the scene. To now have him at the helm and you getting to work alongside of him and learn off of him, that's amazing news, not only for the team, not only for you, but of course the players as well.
Oh, absolutely. My career began, my playing career began on a shaky front. But I can say certainly that it is a complete opposite for my coaching career to have the opportunity to shadow and learn from Frank and to help and assist Frank is beyond words. A guy that has been there, he's done that, he's worked with the best, and he's won multiple titles. He has a formula that I want to know and I want to learn. I've had a few discussions with Frank. I've known him for the past few years as well, so I'm looking forward to it. And my instinct tells me that it will be a successful year, but the ball is round, so we can't get ahead of ourselves. Correct. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think something that we're trying to do a little bit more this year is keep the expectations private, keep the expectations within the players and the coaching staff, but let's not publicise that. We're all excited for the upcoming year, no matter what. Brand new division, some reignited rivalries, some new ones to look forward to, and I think that's exciting enough, and that's enough for people like me on the media side of things to get my teeth into. But just as we wrap up, I thought I'd just give you a moment to talk about the ODH Player Project. That will be a partnership that we do with the McKinney Chupacabras anyway. So I thought that it would just be a nice way for us to finish up, so you can talk a little bit about how that process has gone so far and what the potential future of that looks like.
Well, ODH Player Project pretty much started in July of last year. It's essentially an ecosystem of support for the soccer player, and we're very big on mentorship. We're very big on the side of the game that not many people are aware of, and it's informing parents and informing athletes that this isn't an easy road. It's not you can get up and get there tomorrow. This is building blocks, and just informing them, showing them that you can take this way, you can take this way, you can take this way, and still not make it, and you have to be okay with that. No, what we do focus on is growing and building incredible human beings. We have little Neve who now spreads his bed every morning because it's something that we implement. We have Gio who does the same. So with that being said, we want everybody to go on and have, incredible 10-year careers. But the reality is, Elliott, that the truth is 1% will.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's important and integral that we implement that aspect. When you shake someone's hand, look him in the face and shake his hand, or shake her hand, or establish these values that are not just soccer related, but related to mankind in general.
And I think that's a really good message to end on, not just for the ODH Player Project, but that's what our fans can expect from you with our players as well. They'll get that kind of mentorship, and like you say, 1% of them will actually make it as a professional, but that doesn't mean that the stewardship and the education of how to be a good pro and a good person has to stop. And I think that's fantastic to hear from you. So Omar, thank you for joining me. It's been a long time waiting. I'm very, very happy to have done this. I look forward to seeing how this next year or so plays out with yourself and Frank. But to everyone at home, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and follow along if you're on the other platforms. But for myself, Elliott Stockdale, and not captain, coach Omar Holness, it's a very big thank you and goodbye.